Again, I
So
welcome Anat.
thank you. I'm excited to join you. Happy Mother's Day, by the way.
Happy Mother's Day.
Does anyone have any question, or maybe you want to start with the question,
No,
May,
no, no.
or
I don't even know where to begin. Obviously, you're a filmmaker. You're in the field as a
Mhm.
reporter, and you were the one to write your parents' story.
Mm.
Um,
Well, I'll tell you what, it was, when this is the huge story. There were 14 other people involved, 14, and in the hijacking, because there were it's just easier to say hijacking because it's more people respond to it stronger. But the truth is, it wasn't hijacking because it was an empty plane. And the definition of hijacking is to take people, but there were 16 people in total, and another 50 people involved, and another, I don't know how many people involved in the free world. So when you start telling the story, when we made the film, it was like the question, what was the story about, really? Is it about how they planned it? Is it about how they got caught? And then we realized that it is about two things. First, and mostly, it's about how an individual, people who are not in politics, just regular civilians, have the power to even bring down tyranny, thanks to, of course, solidarity of the crowd. It means also the people who were involved in the Operation Wedding, but also the people who were demonstrating for them. So this is one thing that I still have to remind myself sometimes, because sometimes you feel like, why should I go to this demonstration and just like this one person? And then and I think like that a lot of the times, and then I remind myself, how can I think that? Because I have proof that it's those people, those individuals, they changed it, because the demonstration caused the Genic Vaccine Amendment, which was an amendment to stop trade with the USSR, and this is what basically brought the USSR down.
I
So
remember being in college and actually the end of high school, and speaking to congresspersons about that amendment.
mm, that was probably the most powerful. From my research, I think that was the major breaking point. But it started because and thanks to demonstrations of people that were demonstrating for Jews to get out of Russia, and it was so. And I think it affects for us today. And the second thing is really is it's connected to it, is really that when you do something as big, you first of all need to only take chance on yourself, not by hurting other people and taking them as hostage for your cause. And second of all, realize that you are going to pay a price. People who change history had always had to pay the price. It's never just hero and glory, So it's those are the two things that we, even though we spoke about it only briefly, but I think this is the conclusion. I'm hoping that people are getting that conclusion after watching the film. You tell me, you just saw it, so.
If you are interested in speaking or asking a question to Anat, please unmute yourself. Meryl, I see you've done that.
I'm curious if
you gotta click right.
I don't. Sorry. Oh, I'm curious if the people you've spoken to, including your parents, have any regrets, knowing what they know now. Would they have done it again, knowing what they went through to get to the other side? And the movie said they divorced even. There's just so much that happened afterwards, both good and bad. Do they have regrets? Would they have made the same decision?
Well, they told me, I have asked them, and they told me that they would have done it again. It was worth it. Of course, they knew they would be arrested. They even suspected about the death sentence. They did not realize it's going to be as big result as it was. We had approximately 300,000 Jews leaving the USSR and almost 400,000 people in general free, but I don't think they thought it would be as big. But they all said we would do it again. And maybe not now at the age of 75 and 80, but then they were 25 and 30.
I have a question.
Mm-hmm.
So your film is so moving to me, and I wanted to ask two things. One is, I was unclear when they were trying to fly the airplane for 15 miles what they were going to. Your father mentioned a concentration camp, so I didn't know where he was going to, if they got over, you know. And then I have one more comment after that, but.
Okay, yeah, we'll do one at a time. I don't think it was 15 miles. Basically, it was about a 1 hour flight to Sweden, but it would be 15 minutes flight to cross the border. So after 15 minutes, they are no longer in danger because they are no longer in the USSR territory. That's one thing. The reason they wanted to go to Sweden was simply because they didn't have enough gas for Israel.
Thank you. That yeah. No, the second thing I just wanted to say, like, some of the moments that stood out for me were so powerful was your mother dancing the waltz in that courtyard in the prison. I don't think I'll ever forget that. It was so incredible about the human spirit, and then the way that your father like hid his books in his gullet. Like, I cannot, like, it's so amazing to me. But also that moment when you were in the prison and you cried, and I was just crying along with you. Like, it was so powerful. Thank you so much for sharing your story with us. It was very
Thank you. I'll tell you. I'll tell you why I cried so much.
Spirit.
Oh yeah. I'll explain to you why I cried so much. And there is like such a story behind the crying, because first of all, I told my mom, don't cry so much when we're filming. I told her before because I didn't want. My mom is a very strong woman, but she's very sensitive and she cries a lot. And I didn't want to have the whole film of a woman crying all the time. So I told her, stop, don't cry, like, be strong. And then we came to the KGB prison. Okay, so my producer, who is from the USSR, he didn't say we're going to KGB prison. He told me we're going to the KGB museum. So museum, okay, so we're going to a museum. And I was like, okay, let's just make it fast, you know, let's just go to the museum. And it sounds boring, and I don't know. And suddenly we went down to the museum, and I see it's like a real prison. And my mom starts looking for her cell. And then I realized she was there, because I didn't even know we're going to where she was before the trial. I didn't realize it. It's just in the center of town, people drinking cafe outside, walking, you know, with their dresses, and down below is a prison. And not just like a regular prison, but just, you know, it just looks like a torture cell. And I wasn't prepared mentally, which was a good scene at the end. But I didn't know we're going to film there. So yeah, FYI, when they tell you museum, they probably in Russia, they mean it was a real prison. No, it's not Russia though, it was in Latvia. You can also visit there if you go, you should go. If you go to Latvia, then definitely don't miss it. It's in the center of town.
So I actually demonstrated as a teenager for the freedom. And
Leah, 1 second. Those of us who demonstrated or who were at the march in 1987 in Washington, D.C., please raise your hand.
I wish I could see.
So, but I think that it was very what you're saying is very powerful and very timely about the impact that we each can have, and how that we think of ourselves as a single entity and sort of having no major impact as a single person. We don't think in terms of, but when we unite. Mm-hmm. So thank you for that.
Oh, thank you. Thanks. I was really trying to, it was very important for me to inspire. And I think that the general story of many Soviet Jewry is the the ending of the Holocaust. You know, how in the end we managed to win and stay strong. And it was thanks to many aspects. And especially the fact that we had a country, of course, so we were able to be a little bit stronger. Yeah.
Do any of our 7th graders have comments or questions for Anat? Ari.
Yeah, so for me, like, my parents come from Russia and they were Russian Jews, so they are part of the 400,000 people who left. And it like amazes me because every time like they tell me, like, one of the big, like, they explain, how do I say this? They in Russia they said like they don't have like I don't have a Russian culture, like maybe I speak a little bit of Russian and like, I eat some Russian foods, but other than that, and they say like there was this aspect of like nobody really did anything. It was all how they felt and how like this like how it's like you couldn't really make change. And so it like amazes me that like your parents could like do that even in a like, as I understand it, a culture where that was kind of unthinkable, I guess.
Well, first of all, I don't speak Russian at all, and I grew up in Israel, so I understand you. I also don't have Russian culture I'm also not part of it, although I understand it from the outside, but I'm Israeli, just like you grew up in America, but I understand what you're saying. It is amazing. They were desperate. They really hated they really hated the country, and the country hated them. Now, in this kind of situation, you have two choices. You can either ignore it. You can just say, okay, we have some anti-Semitism, we have some difficulties, but this is our life, and just lower your head. And I think that's what most people would do. And I'm not saying this as judgment, because I do it a lot. Sometimes you just don't have the energy to fight for every little thing that's wrong that's happening in your life. It's not possible. But they felt like they couldn't live like that. They wanted to be in the only country that they feel that no one would tell them that they don't belong, which is Israel. So they were willing even to die for it. Now, I don't know how they felt exactly, how they were arrested after they were arrested, because to think about it and to actually be in prison, maybe they had a moment that they regretted it. But at this point, they knew that the whole world was watching them, and they inspired other people to fight. So they had to be strong also for other people. So, yeah. And I'm glad you appreciate it. It's nice to hear.
It was very brave.
I have a question for the other students. If you were in this situation, do you think you would join this group, or what do you think? Do you think you would stay or leave and risk your freedom?
Shana.
Well, she's not sure how to answer, but interestingly, when the film finished, she turned and asked me the same question. She said, "What would you have done?"
Really?
I think that's one we're both going to have to roll around for a bit. I mean, yeah. I think it's easy to sort of say that you hope that you would have been one of the people who understood that standing up was part of what needed to happen. But of course, that whole group was also saying that they recognized that there was a really serious risk that they would be arrested and potentially killed. So
and I would like to also say something that is not mentioned in the film, and I only realized it after I was doing lots of Q&As, that their lives before were not that bad. I mean, they all had jobs. They were living in the center of Riga. It's like a European city, basically. My mother was working as an engineer, and their life, okay, so there was a huge anti-Semitism, but that happens a lot right now as well in many places. So the difference is that if someone in Europe, let's say, they want to go to Israel, they can, and they just couldn't. They were not allowed to leave. So that was the difference. And I think for myself, I thought about it a lot. I think I would probably be in this group. I'm not sure how I would handle prison terms because I am very spoiled. So I don't know how they. This was the part that I'm surprised about, how they could do so many. I don't know how it's possible to survive such conditions. So yeah.
But I guess it sort of says a lot about the power of sort of mentally what the state is when you don't feel you have any freedom. Even if your day-to-day life feels like you can move with a relative amount of freedom, you go out to work, nobody is actively hurting you. On the other hand, you know that you are not free to travel. You know that you are not welcome in the country.
Yeah, and plus even minor things like learning Hebrew were considering as, it's not a crime, but they would say, you're probably a spy because why do you want to learn another language? My mother, for example, she received 10 years in prison in the trial. 3 years she received because of trying to escape, and the other 7 years was because she distributed Hebrew books. So like the Hebrew books were a serious crime more than to try to escape in their perspective. So this is how crazy it was. So it's not like it wasn't allowed, but they would say you're a spy. And then you somehow were arrested. Yeah.
I had three questions.
Wonderful.
One,
yes.
Why did your parents, with their friends, do this when they did this? Did you know about this growing up?
Mm-hmm.
And why and when did you decide to do this film?
Oh, three. Okay, so timing is very important in life, and all your questions have so it's not like they were waiting to do it. They wanted to leave. They submitted for visa. You have to submit to apply to leave. They were refused, like most people were refused. And even my mother, on the second time, they told her, you are not allowed to submit again, even. She was refused even from submitting. And my father was recently released from prison because my father was in prison before that because he wrote an anti-Soviet like poetry and he distributed, and for that he received 7 years. He was just released, got out of prison, met my mother, and a year later they were arrested again. So it was just, it was the right timing, but it wasn't like they were waiting for this time. It just happened to be in a good timing when censorship in Israel, there was a censorship because they were trying to protect the people in the Soviet Union. So the journalists were not allowed to write about them. So at that time, censorship was already down, and it was just good timing. It's funny to say it today, but if they wouldn't have been caught, if the Egyptians, I was about to say, because it's similar, if the Soviets would not have given my father and the pilot death sentences, then if they would give them, let's say, 2 years in prison, so the world probably would never notice it. So what? I mean, they did some crime, they received like 1-2 years. But no, because they were the response was so strong of the Soviet, then, so it should have happened this way. And regarding your second question, I grew up with this story, but in a very fairy tale kind of way, because people, my teachers and people in the street, they always come up to me and they always say, oh, your parents are heroes. And I saw my parents on TV, and the TV broadcaster said, oh, these are heroes. And no one ever speaks about the time in prison or how hard it was. They just say these are heroes, and everybody's looking at them, and it's like, okay, so my parents are heroes, and you know, this is how I grew up. And when I started working on the film, it started to sink in, like the story behind it, because my parents never spoke about it. And we didn't have it like a shadow behind us. We just had, in my opinion, I thought was a normal life, but apparently not so normal. And I started working on the film when I was thinking about it from a very young age, because I studied filmmaking. I was always thinking about it, but I never had the courage to do it. To make a film, this film, it took me 4 years to do. Now, when I say 4 years, I mean every single day. You don't have like another job. It's not like something you do in the evenings. It's from morning until night, stress. And I only start to get some, you know, paid after 2 years. So it's very difficult to make a film. You don't know if it's going to be a success or not, and it's very difficult to get sponsored for a film. So it took me a really long time to do it, but it basically, I started working on a film after a very big car accident I was involved in. Not my fault. Someone else tried to catch like a red light, and I was sure, absolutely sure, that this is it for me, that the end of my life, that I'm dead, because he ran into my car so fast that my car was spinning, and I even took out a traffic light from the pavement. It was that fast, and the car was spinning. I was holding my hands on my head, and I was thinking, how is it possible that I'm going to die? Because I didn't make the movie about my parents yet. And after it was over, I realized that if this is the one thing I'm thinking about the moment before I die, so this is like the thing I'm supposed to do. And I should just stop being afraid from uncomfortable life and do it. And not that similar to how my parents did it, but of course I didn't have to be in prison. But also sometimes you have to give up on what's comfortable and what you know, and you have to just take a risk and do something important. And from the moment I started doing it, even on the difficult time, I always felt some sort of joy inside of me that I'm following my quest, my mission in life. Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone have any final comments, questions? Meryl.
So what are your hopes now that this movie is out? And I believe it came out in, 2016? Is that correct? Or what are your hopes now that the gates have been opened, so to speak? What are your hopes and message for the film now? How can people who've seen this, is it just so that nobody forgets? Is there another message that needs to come out? What are your hopes for people who see this film, and how can we help you maybe?
Well, yes, thank you. Yeah, it was released in 2016. We have won 21 awards. We got some good reviews, but it's not enough. It has been distributed in Israeli television, Latvian television, European, in Russian, 33 Russian languages, not Russia, like Russian languages, but not yet in North America. So I would love to have it on TV or, like on stream. I don't, not something just like Amazon, because Amazon is basically a library. You want something that people get some notice about it, some commercials about it. Okay, so, and also for me, the most important thing is that the film is part of a Jewish educational program. For me, I think I didn't create the film for teenagers. I created it for adults. But when we start showing it for teenagers, we saw that they respond very well. They love it, So it's maybe because I wasn't trying to educate. Maybe that's the little secret. I'm just trying to show the story and to make you identify with the people who are not just like methods of heroes, but just like regular, not regular people, but people, human. So for me, the most important thing really is to have it on educational programs, especially in Israel, but also in, America and Europe. And I have created, after I finished the film in 2016, I have created together with Bar Ilan University a program that's called the Refusnik Project, and it has a free sources for educators for interactive lessons to teach about the Soviet Jewry. And we are now also giving a grant for educators who teach about Soviet Jewry struggle, and we're giving some grants which are due on June 4th, next month. So I'll put a link so you have and it's not just remembering the story. The story, look, it's good to know history and it's interesting. I think the story is a tool to remind us how strong we are. Because at that time, and people here who were also demonstrating, I think we'll all agree, that no one thought that it's possible that the USSR will be brought down. So it felt like an impossible struggle. And I think it's just a good reminder of how strong we are. And I think and that's why I think it's important to tell. And I think that just my film it's more accessible to watch because it's not so long. And you have more opportunities to identify with the characters. So, yeah. The best thing to do is tell other people about it and tell.
We will certainly tell other people about it. We will spread the word. I will in education circles and to the rest of the Emunah community. Hopefully, Brotherhood or Sisterhood will pick up the film and share and show our adult ed program too.
I'm curious to hear from one of the students. What scene did you most feel connected to? Like what moment was more interesting for you? I'm curious to hear because I'm thinking every time I hear different answers from this age. So I'm curious. I'm doing a survey. Anyone feels like answering? If you're not too shy.
Answer that. What scene? I know Tarver's like Mayor.
Like what scene was most surprising?
Or impact?
Okay. Or
powerful.
I don't know. Probably the one where your mom was like waltzing in the prison courtyard. That was like cool that like she could like turn it around and not be like traumatized from when she was there.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
that was bizarre. I was worried that she would be scared, but then she was like she felt normal there. I guess she spent too much time there already, so it was not as scary as it was for me. 2 years after, in 2017, we premiered the film in Latvia in the prison. And when we were there, many people came, and suddenly I didn't feel, when I was there the second time, I also felt, well, it's not like a nice place, but I wasn't as terrified as I was the first time. So, but my mother waltzing, yes, yeah, that I agree with you. I also think when I saw this film, because I wasn't there when she did it, I was crying at the other cell. So I just told her, go with the photographer, let me come down, you know, and then I saw it later at night in the hotel, and I thought, oh my God, this is like this scene. We got it. So, yeah.
When you entered the cell and it looked like they were going to close the door, I got really anxious.
Yeah. It's a difficult place to be in. Everybody that they go there the first time. Also, one of the member of the group, he told me that he went there for a tour, and he couldn't stay there more than 5 minutes. He just ran out. He couldn't. It was too much. Yeah. Any other? I see someone pointing. Ari? Or
yeah, probably the part where it was like how it described like every other person was a KGB informant, and like how they like tried to break you down until like you became kind of a spy for them, and how only like some people could like not comply.
Yeah, it was a really a situation. You have to be either with the KGB or against them. You couldn't just be in the middle. You have to choose side. So they wouldn't let you even just to live a normal life and just be something not political. You have to be political. So it kind of was forcing you. Interesting.
And the idea that when she moved to Israel, about how she never really felt, it was like, what do you mean they're not listening in on the phone? What do you mean I'm not being followed? You know, it's like, can you imagine to feel like you're being followed and watched and listened to all the time?
Yeah, she still feels like that, but I told her, okay, who cares? We're not doing anything wrong. So maybe it's true. I mean, maybe we are being listened to, but it's the thing is that the Soviet, they did use it. Like saying if you learn Hebrew then you're a spy. They twisted it more. I just had this conversation yesterday with a few of my friends about, because of the situation now, everybody's being followed, you know. So we were really thinking about where is it protecting and where is it too much, and it's very difficult to. We haven't reached an agreement, so. Yeah, but definitely the USSR, definitely they were listening, and they had a lot of people telling them what's happening, and each and every one was being followed all the time for ridiculous things. Yeah, not for.
One hasn't spoken. Does anyone else want to?
Yeah, that talk show was a little bit weird. Like the guy looked like he was from Star Trek, the host. What's up with that talk show?
First of all, Russian shows are very funny. I don't know if you noticed also the one who was also rolling in the sleeping bag. It was funny. The talk show was from 1999 or 1998. And it was a daily show. It was very famous. Everybody who grew up at that time in the USSR, they saw it every day. And when I saw it for the first time, I thought it looked like a trial, right? It looked like they're accusing him and asking him. But actually, they weren't. And at the end, his sentence was of the host. He said, thanks to Anat Kuznetsov and his friends, we are all free and we can leave the USSR however we want. So I was surprised. But the way it was constructed, yeah, I also felt like it was an interrogation. Yeah, things were different in the 90s. There was some hope that Russia will change as a country. But now people don't feel like that anymore. So, yeah.
It was an amazing film. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I'm so glad you all enjoyed it.
Really did.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Okay, I think we'll end on that note. We will remain in contact, and if anyone has any questions after today, we can certainly be in touch with Anat. And again, happy Mother's Day. And Anat, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you. I really enjoyed it, and have a nice Sunday, and keep in touch.
Yes, we will. Okay.
Bye.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.
Thanks. Bye.